Give us a sense of what you think the practical effects will be for women, and even more broadly for the workforce of this decision.
Thank you, David. Thank you for having me. The balance of power, the name of this program, is exactly the correct framing for this issue, because this decision is not about abortion. It is about power and patriarchal control over women, especially having a negative impact on poor women who can't travel to other states or other countries, and people of color for whom these consequences will fall most harshly. There is no doubt of that, because we've seen that before. Some of us remember before. And so the next steps have to be that literally we start over again, creating a new jurisprudence, a new legislative basis for women's civil and human rights to make their own childbearing decisions. You, I think, mentioned that there is conversation in the opinion, which I haven't read fully yet, but I have been saying for years that if abortion is overturned, then so is the right to contraception, so are LGBTQ rights, including marriage equality and many other rights of that are not explicitly named in the Constitution, but that have been affirmed by prior courts. And so what we need to understand is that all civil rights are under threat. So it's not just women who will suffer. It is women, their families, and also it is an economic issue as well. You know, there is not a woman who is in an executive position right now who could have been there 100 years ago, both because of law, but also because there was no way for women to reliably be able to plan and space their childbearing. Well, now there is. And it is huge. It will have huge implications, economic implications for families and for companies.
So, Gloria, take us back through history, if you would, a bit. Not that you were there for it. I'm old enough to be. You're not. But one of the things that strikes me is it's 50 years now since Roe versus Wade, and yet the country did not come together behind that decision. Unlike, for example, Brown versus Board of Education. 50 years after Brown versus Board of Education, everybody was pretty agreed it was the right decision. That didn't happen here. Why was that? It still seems to be just as divisive as it was on day one.
I have been here for quite a bit of it, David, and but I will go back even further to 1873 when the first laws were passed outlawing contraception, the Comstock laws. It took 100 years from that time till 1973 when Roe was decided by the United States Supreme Court. So it has been a long trajectory, and the reason it has taken so long and the reason there has been such pushback against it is precisely because the move toward gender equality is, because it affects every single one of us, it is the most is the most radical, as it were, movement for social justice in the country and really on the face of the earth. And for women to become first-class citizens, not second-class citizens, the first thing you have to be able to do is to determine whether, when, and with whom to have children, to have authority over your own bodies. So that's why I said at the beginning, understand this issue is not about abortion per se. It is about power and who will wield it, how they will wield it, and over whom.
And Gloria, taking your notion of sort of a battle, a tug of war over gender equity in this country, one of the things the Supreme Court did today, I dare say, was move it more into the political branches, away from the courts. What possible actions could be taken by the political branches to try to address some of the downsides you identify?
Mm-hmm. We don't know yet what this particular court would do if there were federal legislation, but that's the first thing that needs to happen. And when I was president of Planned Parenthood Federation of America, we wrote a piece of legislation that essentially codifies not just Roe, but codifies the right to make our own childbearing decisions, and that's the language of it, without government interference, as a human right, as a civil right. Not just as a gender issue, but literally as a civil and human rights issue. So that is the first thing that needs to happen, not merely protecting clinics, not merely protecting women. Those are very important things to do. But we need to have a core conversation in this country about, is a woman a citizen? Abigail Adams, you may recall, asked her husband John when he was writing the Constitution to remember the ladies, and he didn't. He made fun of her, and we're still suffering from that even now. America has not come to grips ever with making women full and equal citizens, and that's where we have to go. That is why I say, the fact that Roe was cleanly overturned might end up giving us that opportunity to have that important conversation and to build an entirely new jurisprudence of reproductive rights.